Opening signal lines of screen lines, adaptation lines of towers is a redirect signals of panels. We have to process our communication lines of screens. This opens all signals and modify core track interference at division. The center of system location to its setting is all over the calculations how we use our towers. Now that gets all lines of communication lines of calculation. Processing lines of calculation system puts all levels of track calculation how to use electronics. So we're going to center core settings, and we're going to all lines set correlation attractions and division. This opens all cycle lines. Now the track interference puts everything in our network system to understand our highways. But we have to understand the line signals through a frequency line, okay? To understand that is basically, we all have umbrellas. If you look at the umbrella and you look above, you can actually see the webbing system, how it's set. The only difference is it's like a cup. It's like it's covering, right? And that protects you from everything that comes down, right? Which is the rain, right? It's a hover, right? So over cross line signals and line communication system, but you have to understand the actual webbing system is all around in sectors, vectors, and quads. And a 24 line and screen line adaptation lines a signal, right? Sets core track location of this in line communication to its system and travel. There's the umbrella. Okay? Set in that position travel communications, right? But it has direct lines of panels that crosses line screens adaptation. So it gets at lines and it comes into higher levels of signals. Comes in alpha, delta, theta, and omega. Understand the waves that they're using in lines of communication, lines of travel. Has a direct line signal and location system. So it's all lines of communication system. So it's kind of like an egg where it has two lines central, line communication setting from above, from below, and position across angle. So that's lines of communication high system. So this is how it's in lines of calculations. Directing signal locations into a downshift line cross location. Okay, so basically you set the grounds, lines of communication lines that circulates the system location that's programmed. That's connected to your earth line, right? Process calculations. One tether, but it's at three triangulation split of anomaly that sets lines of communications, right? It has a ground line surface that sets lines of course lines of communication lines in your navigation system that sets all communication lines of console. Has a direct line signal and line communications of platforms in walking sequence line communication to its runway. Sets lines of communication line centers. Sun comes in, moon lines rotate the cycles, waiting on signal, waiting on panel, waiting line surface, interact communication lines of provision and calculation. See? That's what we're going to get in position of today, right? So it's kind of like a blip, but it's in skyline. Say it correlates to track interference. Your active towers are inside position unison. It's inside core setting. It's inside, right? Nothing is outside frame, but it's inside you. But now your position is going faster line. The faster you go through an acceleration and time sequence, you have to understand your location grids. It's the cross-referencing signals into expansion now. Instead of correlation, it looks like a shell, right? Because that's exactly what it is. The only difference is you're now outlining your system to expansion of the line, right? So you're putting a lot more lines of communications and settings from north, west, south, and east, right? So your towers are now inside correlation track centers in position of its shell. So once you understand that, the walkway sequence comes in divisions of dimensional door screens in travel. See one door line, and then you go into a 4 to 6 screen lines adaptation, another door line setting to a placebo. It tracks its divisional case to its online calculation setting. This is where it comes into the keys of your universe and traction. 3 central core settings in calculation. All right. All right. Having the keys is understand how to use a skeleton key. Skeleton key basically open up anything in division location to its system, anything in downtown or anything in its country. It's a graduation system. It's a modification system. It's a congratulation system, right? So you got the keys, right? But understanding how the key, you have to also understand how to use the gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is the ground setting. It fortitudes the screen lines adaptation to all levels. It keeps lines of all lines of core track interference into the oceanics. An oceanic line can high center interference into the high core track interference is the cyclone line center that puts all communication setting to your hemi-syncs. The track to its communication system is all over how to use it through the plasma line setting. Now, everything through a plasma line is an energy grid line at a formation location setting to a location grid. Sets core track lines of provisions in 1 cycles and 3 track location. All right. Security line defense. Okay. So everything is above and everything below is a platform of communications. Now, we already been through this traction, right? but this is off signal. See how it comes to off signal location? You're off signaling, right? So you got a platitude and line screen adaptation at electrical line cord in line position, right? It's half signal, right? Half pipe comes in line track lines, a portal lines, a high correlation setting into all lines communication to its platform and track location. Direct lines of signals and security line defense lines of communication. Set up another location grid, cross-referencing signals in ground centers of 1 in position of 2 in position of 3, offset location as settings overheads. Travel point lines of graph. So you guys are coming into cross-referencing signals where you can cross-reference your highways because you're coming in 244 line signals, line position equal lines of 3 zeros and track calculation line direct signals in position lines of 4 track lines or 3 lines of communication lines of 4 track location and 7 correlation in track calculations, right? Setting lines of track communication system is all levels in how you see yourself through your highways and track locations to a system and positioning your networks. Setting lines of communication high direct signals. All right, so we're going to put team in center, 0 correlation lines of setting. 0 lines of 1, I'm going to set up a primer. Sets position 1 of balance. Balance lines of position of 2 lines of balance, 3 lines of balance, and positions of 1 lines of 4. Okay, so that's 14 lines of charge. Set core lines of 1 platform and 3 core line setting. Process calculation, 1 energetic line screen. Direct lines and cross-line communications, cross-referencing signals. You guys have to understand how to get your schematics and cross-line connection. Getting lines of communication lines into pi generates lines of 1, 2, 3 spot, 4 lines, 6 lines of communication. Process calculation lines, direct lines of 0, position lines of equal line in 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 surface, and balance of communication of solar sail. Track calculation lines, the opposite cycle, comes in position location to its capsule. Direct lines of calculation of 45-degree angle, split lines anomaly, split correlation setting, travel and communication, right? Direct lines, cross-line signals, line communication position of process calculation. Direct lines of calculation line interference, balance lines of communication, balance line signals into primer circuits into 3 lines of 4 track location provision. Sets course lines of setting, panels line, rotation surface and track location line communication setting and travel. Okay? So mechanism of force is a direct to a redirect line signal, okay? Everybody has to understand the box frames into a lacing line of a TV, okay? 3 lines of communication lines of 4, right? And then you got a pixelation of, the communication lines. You're in the center communication of the TV reception, right? That's what you're in. You're 2 frames, 3 frames, 4 frames, 6 frames, all through clocking system, right? Done automatically, right? I didn't do it, did by itself. Setting lines of core track interference is direct signals. Now, putting position lines of patterns is understanding how to use the lacing lines in the 3-line communication setting of travel. Data formation lines of 3 track location lines of provision. Cross-line signals, waving cycles, outline, cast line, screen lines, adaptations to its false narratives in a 2-track location. Direct lines of signals, platforms of 1, platforms of 2, platforms of 3, and track location. Direct calculation lines, ground line centers, holographic line screen, and 2 lines of signals, line position location is measured, that correlate track lines of communication size center interference that puts all levels of communication system and track location to its setting, all through process calculation. All right. So you have to really understand how to direct and redirect locations and how to go through a plasma line screen. This is all about penetration line walls. Getting direct signals in position of 1. You're here in center. You got to go through this to get to the setting, right? Process here and position of here. Process line right through the center position, right? But you got to go through 3 central walls. They're plasma's line screens. Get into the outline wall, line communication of plasmesium wall. Track to its communication. Then you come to lacing lines of 3 track location and provision. 4 central line calculation setting through pi generation. Process calculation lines of high center interference. Set security lines of Pluto. Set lines of correlation setting, calculation lines of Jupiter. And communication lines of correlation setting to Moon. And position locations all calculate, modify, and track location. Direct lines of high center interference and line positions calculation. 3 central lines of calculation lines of perception and track location. Direct calculation modification lines of 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 location system. Okay? So this is how you go through a dimensional line screen and a program set correlation lines into 3 track provision that overcross lines of connection. Okay? Center core line setting is the plateau and line rotation surface and magnetic highways in the travel line communication. Direct lines of signals into 1 center, 1 traction, 1 division location. Travel coverage lines of ground centers line operation. That's right, your TV turns into a ground centers into a tunnel. Sets communication lines of ground lines of 1 in position of 2 and 3 lines of tether. Track location lines of 6 lines of platforms, 8 lines of travel, 10 lines of setting, and 12 line rotation and set core system of same calculation. See, very powerful stuff. So getting that in line position location settings, you had blue line cycles and track location, right? Then you had red lines in center core system. So you can use the correlation setting outline or inline position of travel. But direct signals and modification comes into automatically center lines of communication lines of cloak and dagger. Direct lines of signals, volume communication lines, high direct location setting, track location lines of green line cycles, sets communication lines of travel, in and out line rotation service coming up through traction, out through the TV. Okay, you see it out. You see it out now, right? It's out through the plasma TV, right? All right, done through equation. Now, metric lines of scale is all about understanding how to scale the balance communication in your system. It opens all track location in your settings. Open all signal locations, understanding floaters that in-line communication in your system. Understanding sun codes and line calculations. Getting ground lines, set course direct interference of view. Setting lines of communication lines of platforms and direct signals. Process calculation of grounds, powers, and atmospheres interaction. 3 set core line settings in line communication of tubing. Process lines of 1 in position of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 12 calculation lines of travel and direct signals. Process line calculation setting over cross line connections of vortex. Direct lines of signals in line connection setting to cortex. Direct lines of signals, platforms 1 in position of 2 and 3 and 4 in position. Travel lines in 5, 6, 7, and correlations ascending attractions. Direct lines of modification lines of platforms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines at 8 lines of 10 and 12 track locations and setting over crossing signals across reference signal. That my equation. Okay, there it is. That's the net. You got to understand how to use the netting, the weaving. The routers and the routers, understanding how to crochet, understanding how to knit. It's about understanding how to basically tie your shoes, right? So there's all line condition in and out, and line communication over line loop, line conditions pull through, right? So there's all lines of communication, how you come in and code weaving and line signals and track levels. Getting lines of communication lines of center line and operation line calculation setting and travel position of point graph communication lines of U and center communication, right? Now, getting that connection in high centers, the X2000 comes in at 2 platforms. Direct lines of modification lines, see what you've done. Platform 1 in position of platform 2 interactions. Direct lines of signals, process calculation lines, and we go into the green line cycles, green line surface, and green line rotation surface interaction. Direct lines modification lines, blue line triangulation, high correlation lines of platforms, and 0 correlation lines of track communication. Direct lines modification, high center interference into red. Red correlates and setting line security, line rotation surface, and track location. Comes out through equation. Okay. See, it's all coming out, see? So we all have to understand how to mechanism settings of force lines, communication lines, and network, screen lines, adaptations, understand the cross-line referencing and calculation with shell. All through dimensional line screens of doors, right? Direct signals. To the levels of line position to expansion, you have to understand your binary relines. It's a reset position of its program that sets core track interference, and that's where you guys come in line communications start using your fail safes. So we communicate lines of fail, into volume, into vast, calculates lines to high center location setting. So forming lines of vast, forming lines into velocity, and forming lines in vacuum in 3 set correlations. Foundation lines of 1 in position of 3 in position of 6 in travel. Direct lines into cross lines of binary lines at 3 track location. Prevention lines of cycles, primer circuits lines of 1, 2, and 3 course centers in travel in point lines of graph communication. Down by equation. All right. The center communication line direct signal is a plasmazing wall that connects line signal locations, how you use your cell and line connection in your cells. Cells lines in this in position. This is what your cells look like. Okay, these are your cells, these are line dividers. Now they're setting bracket lines of hangers and track communications. Cells create the patterns, they create the bridging, and they create the towers of communication line signals. Unison is a very information location to its setting to a wall. These are cells inside your body. Now, each line mechanism has a 1 signal in position of 1 atom setting. That's an atom, right? Rotates its surface in circulation rotation setting. Process calculation lines of 1/3, 1 triangulation, 1 surface, and track location. Direct lines of sonar, lines of portals, lines of a black hole, and lines setting the surface. Process calculation lines of a cross line, signal line, individual line, cross referencing signal, cross location system, all levels of activation screen. Direct calculates the lines of one signal, one panel, one surface, one traction, one division, one location, one center calculation. All done by equation. And if you really look really close, you can see the configuration line screen, direct signals and modification. So this is you in track location. See? There it is. There's you. Signify line screen is all line direct signal and modification lines of inner cycles. It calculates and modify and high coordinated track interference, how you start to recognize how to use the energetic location grids when it comes into cross-referencing signals. Cross-referencing signals. Okay? Your expansion is going to higher line signals now. Okay? So you understand the platforms are this way, platforms are this way, in position of traction. Directing lines cross lines this way in timestamp. There's a timestamp right there, right? Center course system of a clocking system and travel, all right? Direct lines and modification lines, set lines of northeast lines of southwest line communications. You are always in position, seeing yourself, inside course setting, line positional levels of navigating your system in calculation. Direct lines of platforms, time jump, 3 set correlations, right? Sets lines of the sun into the position of the moon, right? Core track interference into a black hole and track location. Direct lines of signals, process lines of one signal, one process, one calculation, one screen. Direct lines of energetic pattern, energetic waving system, and travel communications. Process calculation lines of platforms 1, 3, 6, and 8, and 12 set correlations. Done by equation, right? Sending communication or holographic line sending is all levels of open sequence. Getting that communication lines is understand how to use snowy graph interference. Setting lines of TV box location, 3 weather panels, all right? 3 channels of operation, right? You're watching 3 programs in setting. Process calculation lines of 3 waving panels in contraction, right? Setting lines and positional levels of flux. Of course, setting lines in position of tripod and line position of setting. Process ground centers of 3-dimensional lines of dials and correlation. Tractors communication lines of ground centers, operation surface, and track location, all through TV reception, right? 3 different colors, lines of green, line condition setting, and all lines of volume. Track location line calculation setting to a red signal and position of process lines of 2 panels. Process line calculation lines to infinity line rotation surface and track location. Direct lines of 1, direct lines of 3, and process lines of 4 and track locations. 0 correlation lines of setting, 0 lines of 1, 0 lines of 2, cross lines of 3. Direct calculation lines of platforms 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, and 12 set correlations. Travel lines, outline cross lines setting to a cross-referencing signal and travel. Direct lines, modification lines, energetic dome and center core system, and travel correlation lines, flexing line communication line setting, mechanism line connections to pi, generate the communication lines of flux, and travel point lines of graph communication setting that opens all signal location setting to an energetic dome screen that opens all communication lines and navigation line calculation setting your constant communication. That by equation. All right. Getting a communication setting, I'm showing you so many different levels how to create lines of calculation lines to an energetic dome, right? You have to really get into that big configuration, right? Because everything of the structure, your city has an energetic dome. Let's go through course settings. Same lines of structure, to show you exactly. 4 lines of communication. That's your city, right? Has an energetic dome automatically. So you're here in the center on platforms, okay, traveling through it, okay? So once you understand that, the expansion comes in line signals of north, the east lines of south, east lines of west, and east lines of east, and east lines of south, and east lines of north, and track location. So coming to the expansion is the bandwidth line signals that opens all levels of U in navigation. Process calculates lines, energetic lines and settings. Process communicates lines of flux over line, position, location of settings. Process calculates lines of grounds 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in set correlation. That by equation, all right? Setting mechanism lines of energy line, it's all lines of communication system. So you have to understand how to secure, protect, and line save location to nurture yourself inside position. The more you evolve yourself inside, the more you see the energetic dome, right, yourself. Set position lines, track calculation line screens. So you got a center core system. Okay, let's get mechanism line screen. That's you, right? All right, so this is your crop circle. Let's start there, right? So this is your Earth. Right? But your central system, okay, what makes it more powerful is that your body is actually here in space of center, okay? And your avatar is over here in position, traveling. So the mechanism's here, you go here in position of telepathy to your system and travel. And then you go over here, the avatar is here, different atmosphere lines. So now it signals over here, and now it's over here in position lines of travel. Okay? This is the main frame, this is the box frame, this is the triangulation frame, this is the pixel frame. See the face recognitions? Setting line communication lines is a box frame, outer frame, central frame, correlation frame, ionosphere frame. It directs lines of signals and platforms at one cycle, one center, one surface, one triangulation. Process lines and platforms, lines of crop circles, and line connection setting to its system. Calculate, modify, and a triangulation line communication setting to its program. Direct signals in the line setting location setting to a timestamp that edits its lines communication lines of space and time. Okay? Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? All right. Getting direct lines of panels is a binary resetter. Now, the core track line provision lines opens up all communication to your systems. So the calculation modifications, you guys are coming into 13 grounds now, equals lines of the mind, equals lines of course center interference and position over 12 and track location, right? So on Friday, and track calculates line screens adaptation system. What's all levels of new line grounds and a 3 cycles line communication. Direct lines and panels, line singular lines on 1 cycle, line position of mind at 2 panels, line conditions in 1 cycle, 2 panels and 2 and line rotations, and 4 mechanism line calculates setting of solar sail. So how I'm doing this is the process of communication, how it sets the communication lines to an energetic dome. Everything's an energetic dome. Even your UFOs in set correlation setting, you're inside in line position to your system and travel coordination setting. This is your console and communication inside, right? So you're navigating your direct signals into modification or travel, okay? Signified ground line size to interference. This is you and your metabed and traction, right? Gets lines of signals in position location to its avatar, right? Sets course lines, comes in position to center course setting, comes downshift. So this levitates and moves the track location in its division to its opposite system and comes together in a center course system of center calculations of balance and turns into an orb and a probing system of travel. Okay? So I'll show you again in line condition setting to navigation line screen. So it's all geometric lines of shape that change position of programs. Center course system of the umbrella. Okay? Setting correlates system location of the umbrella. Right? So avatar line sequence, navigating your system. This is you and your metabed. Line down and travel, right? So this and this comes together, right? Comes together, okay? Central line communication lines are 3 track location lines of 4 settings in travel. Points, lines of graph, and communication high mechanism location setting in 1 router and 1 router line rotation system of portal line position. Process calculation lines, congratulations, your center course system and center calculation lines are alpha tones. Indirect location lines into Tango Foxtrot, into Romeo Foxtrot, in position location Lima Foxtrot, into location line calculation setting, in uniform location setting, and all process into Alpha Bravo and track location. Done by equation, right? Mechanism of force is a line position lines of travel calculation system. Setting lines of calculation lines the energetic dome. Again, there's the umbrella. Okay, there's the hook. Right, see the hook? Now, the hook line is a constellation path. That's a center course system of split lines and a 4-line rotation surface and traction. Direct lines of modification lines and overlying cross lines. Don't forget the primary center calculations. Direct lines of panels, 3, 4, and 6 location setting. Process lines of 1 cycle, 1 center cross-referencing signal. Cross calculation lines of 1 line provision location of panel. Process line is getting very confusing now because it looks like a delusional system of a drawing. But the central system of all calculated lines of the gateways and position location of the key masters is coming in line communication lines to its dimensional door that comes out of pi and track location. So if you look really close, you can see the center core system of its travel coming out line calculations. It opens up the portal, opens up the line screen lines adaptation of force recognition. Done by equation, all right? Setting communication lines to its umbrella is an ether core traction. Now it has a direct lines of panel when it comes into a Stargate. 3 lines of communication lines of 4. Gypsy comes in line communication system and she navigates your system through its tether and travel communication. She's over here in line position location here in line and high center interference, setting sonar panels in line position of center core system so you can navigate through this center calculation. That's Gyps. That's the unit. Okay. Getting lines of communication system to a start date is understanding the port of communication lines of configuration. It opens all lines of channels and operates lines of surface. Process calculates. Let's go through 12 lines of cycles. Set correlates lines of 7 lines of volume. All right. Setting lines of 24 line sequence. And position lines of equal lines in 42 tractions. Now you tell me, is there time here in any way and form? No. Which means there's no time right now. The process of communications with the team has to get out of time. Okay, so it's kind of like I lose myself, I find myself, I know myself, I am myself, an all level setting, right? Losing yourself is finding yourself through time. Finding yourself and losing yourself is finding yourself through time. So you have to understand the correlation setting when it comes into lines of measure and how to see your highways and network systems. The track calculates lines of the platform, so that's course settings in one position of energetic line screen. Direct lines of 24 line cycles in position of equal lines of 1, in process lines of 2, in clock lines of 3, in track lines of 6, in position lines of 9, in position lines of 12, and sets core track interference of 24 line cycle, and 24 lines of panels, and 24 lines of south and track location. Very complicated stuff from a highway and track location. The set of communication lines of 24 lines of panels sets lines of communication lines as center. Process calculates line. Here comes the umbrella and track location. Directing lines of high center interference sets a line correlation setting and travel. Puts lines of portals, puts lines of divisions, open line signals, all line communication lines, configuration line, phase direction of time sequence, all through calculation. Right? All right. Setting course lines and lines and levels puts line communication lines as setting. The crosses and line communication setting is as cross-referencing signals, getting connected to the high center interference location, grid, and at 3 lines of triangulation. Sets long correlation settings of 1 in position lines of 2, 3 track location, 3 equals lines of DX. Okay, that's division lines of X line. X line position to X box location of center. Process calculates lines as security lines of panels and track location. Direct lines of setting, center lines of surface, and line position of 3 settings in a 4 track location. Direct lines of calculate modify in line position location to a system to all operational line and high track location to a system that it's all communication setting to a train in track location. There's the train. There's the face. See the face right there in the center. See, there's always a face in configuration system. Okay? Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? I told you form lines high center line position of G to D has a geometric lines of geo. The meridian line correlation setting to calculate lines to the meridians. That correlates the track location to a system. So meridian is a track location to your levels that you come into metric lines of scales into water containment service locations to your mermaids and your mermans. In direct lines of calculation string lines adaptation setting that puts lines of underwater cities in line position to its energetic domes and screen location. So you have the mermaids protecting the energetic domes, the underwater cities and track location. You have the position lines of the sharks above the system and travel in track location. You have the correlation lines of the whales that's going rounds in circles and line communications. And you have the dolphins upline signal of line communications program through sonar. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Direct lines of signals is a water information line screen that opens all communication settings and all levels of travels. Direct lines of settings, let's go through 13 line communication lines. That's 7 times the clocking. Now we're adding clocking into 28 line position equal lines of core line centers. So you guys have to learn to use the equal signs through arrows of indication to the clockings now. That process, you calculate, modify how you change your space and time, okay? Get a position of space and time or spaceless and timeless, okay? Platitude line division lines of 2 arrows of indication. 2 lines of signals, line position of process lines of 2. Track locations, 1 setting, 1 center, 1 surface, and 3 lines, and 3 panels of communications. Equals lines of core track interference is 7 equals lines of question and position. That by equation. Now, understanding lines of tether is a line communication lines of console. Getting lines of navigation system is truly understanding how to use the volume and line position. Okay, so we're going to have 28,000 line screen equals lines of tractions. Set lines of high center interference, waiting on signal, and 29 equals lines of 0 in position of 5. Good. 5 lines of 6 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1 and 0. The calculations of countdown. So we're counting down lines, screen lines of up and cross lines of down, cross lines over, cross line signals, and cross location. Process position location line calculation setting has a 29-line cycle, 9-line setting, and 2 track locations, 2 line divisions into 8 lines of division lines of cycle track location. That my equation, right? Mechanism of force lines and line signals is all about understanding how to use the alpha tones. Gets all communication lines at ground center of line position its operation surface. Retract location lines as setting, 1 indicate line, 1 arrow. So that's a direct, okay? So that's a DX lines into box, okay? Box in position of triangulation setting. Process lines of 1, process lines of 2 in traction. Direct lines of setting, location grid. Process communication lines of center core system and travel mechanism line screens adaptation that overcrosses screens in direct location. Very powerful stuff, guys. Okay, that's my equation. So instead of going this way, you go the opposite way, right? So you have to understand how to use connected lines interference. Setting lines of communication lines is Fibonacci, right? You go this way, right? You see the 6 and 9, but you have to understand how the process and go this way in the opposite direction system and all through travel. And if you look really close, you actually can see the set position lines of travel in core track location to its umbrella. Okay, setting lines of 6 is 1 center calculations, right? There's the correlation lines of the 6 location, right? See the 6? Swimming line communication lines and direct signals comes into modification lines of 9 in track location. Setting core lines of 3 platforms of communication, right? Direct lines of waving, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 track location. Process lines is 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 location, 1 center, 1 calculation. Okay? So the communication lines of grounds is the platforms 1, 2, and 3 correlations. Direct lines of modification lines of flux into 3 track location lines of revision. There it is. There's the teleportation inside correlation, right? Directing lines of signal is the teleportation lines of graph. The center communication system is putting everything, all levels, into sequence. Let's get into 2 panels, into primer, right? So in into truth, we come into false. We come into false, we come into truth, right? Sets lines of 3 lines of circles, all colored. And false is all lines open sequence. All colored, open sequence. Colored, open sequence. Okay? Colored, open sequence. Closed. This is closed. This is open. Right? All right, so this is lines of 2 track locations, and this is closed. And this is truth, this is open, right? You ever seen that set correlation lines in position of TikTok where they're using the bottle? Is this open or closed? 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 That's what it is. So you have to understand how to close and open your position into your primer circuits of truth and false narratives and line position location settings to your energetic lines of 1, 2, 3, and 4 platforms and umbrellas. Direct lines of 1, direct lines of 3, 6, and 9 track location. Okay? Now the process communication lines of grounds has to flip the line screen. Direct lines, cross line, calculation lines, upline signals, and line position of its process in communication comes together in line signals in open sequence and position of panel. Process communication line ground center interference crosses lines over line sequence and line position comes together in a truth lines of communication of a closed signal to an open system. Now my equation. Very complicated stuff, guys. All right. So, but very powerful, right? Mechanism of force is understanding the geotheorems. Now, the theorem line correlation setting is the fabric of space, team. Understand the fabrics of space is understanding linen. The position locations across lines of static or anything through lines of correlation setting in a crayon. Crayon is a core track line position location measure that scales the communication lines of balance, the line position of its folders, that tracks the correlation lines of colors, lines of patterns into 3 lines, and track location lines of 6 lines, in line position of 4 lines, and set correlation setting to travel. Direct lines of platforms sets core lines centered to a solar sail in rotation. Energetic dome, right? See it always in a 4-line signal. Always the primer is always going to be in truth and false narratives of open, close. Set position open, set position of close, set position open, set position of close, set position of close, and setting. Okay? Process lines in one platform sets communication lines of energetic dome that opens cross line to a rainbow grass screen. Sets communication cross line signals to location grid that overcross location of signals and default. Sets communication line direct signals in platform 1, 2, and track location overcross signals in line communication of travel. That way equation, right? Force line calculation lines of one platform, and another correlation and calculation of XT1000 another platform attractions. Direct lines of signals, so you guys have to learn how to understand how to navigate your system from above in position, and core line settings and travel communication. Setting core lines to track calculation lines of this way, attractions, and how to track line communication upside down in line position location to a system. Okay? So you have to have fun with your navigation line screens because you're going faster now. So you get into more modifications. So it's kind of like you're hot dogging, right? Like Unisys is going through the towers, right? So it's about speed and acceleration of line connections, right? Going fast through dimension lines and screen lines adaptation. Wall central lines of 1 in position of 2, 3, 4, and 4 platforms. Direct lines of 6, 8, and 12 set correlations, right? See the one panel? Sets lines of split lines into 4 lines into 2 panels, 6 and 8 correlation lines of traction. Direct lines of 1 platform, 1 signal, 1 center, 1 surface, and track location. Direct lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set location net settings. There's the hanger. There's the hanger. See? See it? There's the hanger right there. Boom. That's the hanger. Okay? You always have to see a line calculation setting and flip the switch. It's kind of like when you have an apple, you pick it up, right? But then you turn it, and then you turn it this way, and you turn it that way, and turn it this way, and turn it this way, and turn it that way, and turn it that way. So what you're doing is you're changing the geotherium of the line position that's coursing the channels of flux in a gravitational pull. And every time you go faster and faster, the mechanism line signals to your floaters are line triangulating each other in a graph communication to its network system. Okay, all through calculations of portals and settings. See? There it is. There's a hanger. Powerful stuff, isn't it? All right, setting position lines of calculation lines of grounds. Sets communication system open signal. Sets lines of calculation setting to a position of its program. See? Over crossing line panels, over levels, and track location. See how powerful it is? See? It's amazing when you really understand how to use a 4-line signal. Setting course line connections high center is the pi generation lines of screen. Process lines and 18 line signals. 8 lines of volume. And position of 6 over across. Now, you can add frames. You can add 6 over 3, but you got to go back in position of 1 setting. Okay? Process line center line position opens all signals into your energetic dome. Crosses calculates lines cross line signals in position location to its energetic line screen. Calculate line interference, but 8 lines of 6 into 1 over 3 in track location. Direct lines of 1 signal into flux. See the flux coming in? 2 panels, quarter lines, highest interference, and platforms of settings. Process lines of 1 in position of 2 and 3, and 4 lines of 6 location setting. Process line calculates lines of 1/8, 1/6, 1/5, 1/3, 1/4, and track location. Direct lines of 1/8, 1 panel, 1/8, 1/6, 1 setting, correlation and tractions. Direct lines, modification lines of 1/3, 1/5, 1 line, 1 correlation, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 direct signals, and calculation. Okay, see the intelligence side, right? So setting up a network is understand the docking system of 0 correlation lines of track interference. It opens all signals and closed lines and communicates the system through its truth and false narratives. So you have to really get into understanding how to open and close a water containment system and understand the difference in traction. Okay? So it's very complicated stuff in networks, right? So you're creating different networks. After 7 days, this goes back to 0. Okay? Every 7 days goes back to 0. You're in a new network system. So you come into your geotheriums and track locations to your systems at all levels of your hangars and track location. Okay? Directing the lines of modification lines and cycle lines puts all communication lines of balance and travel. Direct lines of signals come to all levels of expansion locations, direct and redirect your signals locations of power. The power lines of 1 cycle, power communication lines of 1 system, 2 lines of track lines, and X lines in position X, X, Y, correlates the Y equals lines of X, and travel lines and signal lines of 1 in platform, set correlation lines, execute, setting travel lines, run system, and track location. Okay, all done by equation. All right. Metric meter to scale is balance core lines and navigation line screen. Opens all communication settings and calculations. So we're going to go back to 18 lines of volume, back to 17, back to 16, back to 15, and 14 is going to be above signal over cross location overdrive, right? So 18 lines of measure, okay, 17 lines of cycle, 16 lines of measure, 15 lines of open, all right? Puts lines of position, all lines of 14 equals lines of 18 in track location, okay? Sets lines of calculation lines of one cycle equals lines in position lines of 7 sevens. Set correlates lines in position lines of track location at 8. What are we at? 18. See? 18 of 8. See? 18 of 8. See? That's communication line signal locations. How I'm communicating with my computer of 18 lines of volume equals lines of core track interference of 2 panels equals 8. We're at 18.8. Is that coincident? Thumbs up? No. Traction. All division in cycle. Directing modification lines of console is a navigation lines of screen. Now we have to really understand how to use our lines of Skynets. Skynet line, provision lines, cycles lines, communication with system. Center core setting, platforms and position lines of travels, and primer circuits in 2-track location. Direct lines of 1 in position of 2. Process lines of 3 in position lines of 12, right? So you have to understand how I go from 1, 2, 3, and 12, or 1, 2, 3, and 8, or 1, 2, 3, and 9, or 1, 2, 3, and 12, right? Or 1, 2, 3, and 9, or 1, 2, 3, and 6. The reason why I'm doing that is because I'm closing and opening portals through settings of a water containment system that opens the track location of the system all through plasmasian setting. You have to penetrate through the correlation lines of the floaters, the calculation setting to the floaters in flotation device. The lines of the communication lines of the levitation ground lines sets core track locations in a 4-line signals into measure core track line setting of a plug-in system and 4 calculation setting to travel. That my vision. All right, so it's really interesting, right? How you come in a clock line communication, how it comes back to 18, how it went from 17 in position back to 18. That's communication to my computer, right? Setting lines of volume is line signaling. Now you have to really understand how to get it in position lines at different levels and networks that you guys come into all levels of new signals. You got a plates line and communication lines of high signal locations to your setting journal. You log into space. Day 1, okay, set up network system to X lines of 1. Set platform signature lines of general, direct line signals, cross line connection setting, and transmission. Open signals, in position closed signal. Open signal, closed signal. Open signal, closed signal. Okay? So that's what it basically is. Okay, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen it on TikTok where basically, they're describing to somebody else that's there. Say, is this open or closed, right? So this is what it is. This is the water. Okay. Okay, so this is line. That's the water inside. That's the containment, right? So, is this open or closed? Is this open or closed? It's open, right? Open here in 2 lines of position, right? Now, if I turn it this way in traction, I know it's confusing, guys, but you have to get used to this. What is in track location? Is this open or closed? Closed, right? The center core system is all levels of mechanism line screen. It opens all communication system how you use the platforms. Understanding how to use your truth and your false narratives puts you in all levels of platforms of communication. Is this open or closed? Closed. Okay. So you have to understand how to use the correlation lines, the coloration lines, the patterns, and the line communication with position locations to overcross line calculation setting to your primer circuits and your primates. Now we already got into the primates and travel line position locations. But you have to understand how to direct your lines into all levels of your network system location to your umbrellas. Okay, how the course lines are calculated setting. Setting lines of tether in line track location. Setting lines of tether and a track line communications. Setting lines of flux and line, there's the flux, right? Set core track interference line direct signals into modification lines of 3 platforms and track location. The XC1000s come in platforms line setting and travel. Direct lines of signals, cross line connection setting in position of 1, in position of 2, and track location. Setting lines of communication setting to open signals. We got 2 panels in line rotation, surface, and tractions. Direct lines of signals into open, close, close, open, in track location. Sets line calculation with coloration lines of screen, coloration lines of open, coloration lines of screen, coloration lines of open, and track location. Direct lines of panels, cross lines of 1 in position of 3 and 4 set correlations. Direct lines of 1 in position 2 and 3 lines and 4 set correlations. Track lines, communication lines of 3 panels, split lines of anomaly. Okay, very powerful stuff, isn't it? There it is. Okay. Setting lines of 4-line cycle. Setting lines of north, east, west, and south, right? Sending core track interference into your own news in direct signals. Cross this calculated line north, east, west, and south correlation. Okay? Is everybody getting very confused? What's going on here? Is it open or closed? All right. So it's really understanding the mechanism, line condition of force recognition, acceleration. You can be interstellar mode, hyperdrive, hyper mode, or anything through conduit line calculation setting to all levels of line setting locations to catapult, or anything through line calculation setting to lines of acceleration, or anything through time sequence. It's all levels of acceleration of speed, guys. That's all it is speed, right? Speeding here, track location. So you're here and you're here, but now you're over here in cross line, right? So you started here, you're here, and now you're over in position of backline, right? So you have to understand how to direct and redirect a network system, how to code weave. Code weave, line signals as scramblers. If we get a one-line box in one signal and position lines of two travels equals lines of escape. Now that's on your computer. Send core lines of existence, systematic lines of communication, right? Direct lines of panels, set core track interference on one platform, energetic line screen direction. Direct lines of cycles, flip the switch and line position locations in open sequence line communication, right? Comes together through an arrow indicates lines of north and south. Brings it together in a circulation rotation to an atom line rotation that puts all communication to its orb and track location. That my question? Right? So it's very powerful how you guys connected these things. Now I know this school today is extremely powerful in all lines of primer settings and travel communications. So you guys have to understand how to direct and redirect network signals after 7 days in track communication. Right? All right, that's it. We're done. See you in 5.